The amazing Liz Wiseman with us today. She's an author of the New York Times bestsellers Multipliers, The Multiplier Effect, the Wall Street Journal bestsellers Rookie Smarts. Most recently launched was the Impact Players, which I love and have read with my children, and they love. We have language to work with each other on now. She's a former corporate executive who now works as a management researcher, an executive advisor, and the CEO of the Wiseman Group. This has received the Top Achievement Award for Leadership from Thinkers 50 and is consistently named one of the world's top 50 management thinkers in its biannual rankings. All these fancy things. I love it. So here is Liz. Hello, hello.
Oh, well, hello. And I have to say, I'm going to come out of the gate with, I'm a little bit jealous that you read the book to your kids, because I still haven't been able to get my kids to read this book. I'm like, hey, mom wrote this book and I've got 4 kids. And the only one who actually really read it was my daughter, Amanda, who was working for me as an intern. So basically I paid her to read the book, and the others are like, I'll get to it at some point.
Well, if I wrote a book, my children would say the same thing. They're more in where I get cool is if one of their friends thinks I'm cool or doing something. And then all of a sudden, oh, okay, maybe what are you doing, mom?
I have to get their friends to read it for them to read it.
There you go. That's the ticket. Okay, so you've published these amazing books, which we are going to talk about because there's so many golden nuggets and lessons in here that apply to all aspects of our lives. But I really want to start with like you, right? Like our story of origin of how we become who we are, kind of the things that form us. So tell me about this. Like I remember reading, maybe your dad had a donut store. Am I right?
He did. I'm the daughter of a donut maker. And, my dad said that he had like the jobs he did were like the 3 least respected jobs in the world. Like he came from a family of morticians. So he did that for a while. And then he like bought a Winchell's donut franchise and did that, worked 7 days a week, night shift, and then he went into commercial real estate, as a real estate salesman. And so, but like the one that I remember that I grew up in was like, my dad was a donut maker, and, we were popular in our cul-de-sac because we always had donuts. They were day old donuts, but, and sugar sort of courses through my veins. And so when I see a donut shop, I'm like, this is my birthright. And my mom is an educator, and so I'm the daughter of a teacher, and I think teaching and educating like runs in my veins as well. And I think I have a lot of sympathy for people who are teaching right now.
Oh, right. Yes.
This impossible job that teachers are trying to take on. But and I grew up, I'm a native Californian, born in Southern California, grew up in Northern California. I think I lived a very, I grew up in a very kind of normal meaning normally dysfunctional, functional kind of family. And, but I think my family life really, really affected my work. Like so much of the work I do is shaped by my experiences in my family where, I wrote this book, Multipliers, that contrasts these like multiplier leaders and, that sort of bring out people's best, and these diminishers that like cause people to hold back and drain. And I'm really sort of the product of a diminishing father and a multiplier mom. And so a lot of, I think, what I've been interested in studying and how I've kind of moved through the work world has everything to do with like how I learned to deal with a fairly difficult father early on in life. And, for a lot of years, honestly, I thought, how come I didn't get an easy dad? Now, back then, I didn't think of it as easy dad. I thought of it as like, how come I didn't get one of these like warm, nurturing kind of fathers who was like, hey, how can I support you? And you can do it. And like, let's go fishing. I got one who was like, we're going fishing. And like, that's not how you bait the hook. And, he was just gruff, and learning how to love him really, really fully really shaped me. And learning how to see him and understand him and love him, I think it's like affected everything I do. Like the gift with this challenge, like, most challenges come
Right.
with a gift.
Yeah, the gift of difficulty, and then what you learn to see. Because I think I heard at one point you said, and I agree with you 100%, hurt people, right? Or people that it's just interesting how our insecurities manifest.
Oh,
And so then when you see these insecurities in people, you learn to say, okay, you love them because you know it's just a pain. And the only way they can get rid of the pain is by getting it out of them and just trying to help them get through that. And so like, I listened to some of the books or some of the things I've read about you, and I'm the same way. Anytime I'm in a situation, I'm always, how does it feel to be that person and respond this way or look this way or talk this way? And then it just gives you so much more understanding of, it's not how I want it, but I'm going to accept it because you need to be seen.
yeah. And I think that's, I like the skill I learned early on was to see what was happening under the surface for my father. Like he was gruff, he was critical, he was difficult. And a lot of people interpreted him as like, oh, like he's sort of unkind. And his behavior on the surface was unkind. He was not, and I should say, he was not, physically abusive. Like it's borderline whether some people might consider it emotional abuse. I never did. I'm just like, why is my dad such a grump? Why is he why does he say awkward things? Why does he say kind of the mean thing rather than the kind thing? And what I began to see is, oh, he's someone who's been hurt. Like life has disappointed him for a number of reasons. And I could see like all these wounds that he carried inside. And I'm like, oh, my dad's not mean. My dad is hurt.
Yeah.
He's hurt. And so he lashes out, or he withdraws, or he is so determined for his kids not to experience the failures and hurts that he's had, that he's overcompensating by trying to like be bossy and a know-it-all. And I just learned to see inside of him. And he would say something, kind of stupid. And like, I think the other kids would be like, oh, and I'd be like, that's not what he means.
Right,
and it was kind of weird. I mean, in some ways it was sort of manipulative on me to like assume that I knew what he meant. But what I kind of developed is this ability to see the difference between someone's behavior and the impact of their behavior versus their intent.
Right. Or even their delivery, right? Their delivery versus their intent. And so where it's helped you is in business, right? Where it helps me is in business saying, oh, well, I can ignore how that was delivered. I know what you meant. And let's just get to the point. And then you're not intimidated in situations where people maybe you get further because you go past the packaging and you can go right to where we're going.
Exactly. Because I was like, oh, I'm not going to operate on what was said on the surface. I'm going to operate on his intent, which is my father loves me and cares about me. Like my father, I can't think of a single time in my entire life that my father said, I love you. But I felt so loved by him. I'm like, well, he says it in some sort of weird kind of ways. But
it's work ethic, right? Some of us have work ethic as our love language. Some of us have words as our, we all have different acts of service, right?
Yeah. And so I felt this love. I also learned this really valuable skill about how do you stand up to bullies. My dad was a bit of a bully. And one of the things I learned is like when I could see the difference between his intent and his impact, and I operated on his intent, it allowed me to say like, no, Dad, we're not going to do that. No, you can't act that way. Like, no, I'm not going to ask my friends to sign a legal waiver before they come on our boat.
Jump on the tramp. Right. Right.
No, Dad, that's ridiculous. Or the time like he opened up my grades my freshman year in college. And I self-funded my whole education. He was very clear, I'm not paying for your education. And so when he opened the grades, I'm like, Dad, no. Let's go back to like, these are my grades and I've earned them and I'd love to show them to you, but that's my choice, not your choice. So like, I'll be opening my grades from now on. And so it made these conversations so natural and easy because I wasn't afraid like of the behavior, I could see the intent. And so when I came into the workplace and I encountered all of these like bossy, know-it-all, tough people, I'm like, and like, I used I work in Oracle, Larry Ellison, who was like, notoriously tough and hard on people. People say like, wow, like, how can you stand working for Larry Ellison? I'm like, Larry Ellison, he's nothing. Like, have you met my father? Like, Larry Ellison's a marshmallow compared to my dad. So it just never, it was like I was a little bit unflappable about people who were a little bit difficult or gruff or just who had little crusty surfaces.
Right. No, that's our weaknesses can be our superpowers, right? Where we learn from those different things. And so like getting into,
And Jen, can I
please.
add something to that? I think for probably about the first 20 years of my life, or maybe 15, like maybe I became aware of it, maybe more around 5 or something, that I was like, I wished that I had a different parenting deck to work with. I'm like, why didn't I get a dad like my friend's dad?
Mm-hmm.
And I always saw this as like a disappointment, a disadvantage. And and I've been thinking like, what would I have been able to do with my life if maybe I had someone who was like, hey, Liz, like let's get you to the best possible college you can, rather than, well, if you want to go to college, you got to pay for it. And it wasn't until sort of maybe mid 20s or 30s that I'm like, I let go of that. And I felt like, wow, I was given this incredible experience. And like, I wouldn't trade it for anything, and not just because, he's my dad and I loved him and, he passed about 20 years ago. I still miss him terribly, but it's like, I benefited so much from that adversity. And it wasn't like all caps adversity. It was just challenge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, wow, it shaped me in kind of wonderful ways. I wouldn't trade it. Like, that was my gift. That was my advantage in life.
Right. And it's hard to see it at that time. Right. And then we get to a point in our life and we can look back and then all of a sudden connect the dots of that's what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I needed to be able to become who I am, to do the things I'm doing. And you become a hero of your story instead of the victim of your story. And I've learned through life experiences that the sooner that we can say, how is this happening for me instead of to me, we are now all of a sudden in a spot of empowerment and where can we take this? And this is all part of my journey. And it makes me able to connect with more people, maybe have the same story.
Well, and I think it gives us this like earned agency. Like, I deeply believe that we all by birth inherit a sense of agency, like a need to control ourselves, to operate independently, to make choices, and of course be accountable for those choices. Like, I deeply believe that everyone deserves autonomy and agency and choice. But then there's some parts of it that we have to earn.
Right.
Like,
right.
And be entrusted with. And some of it gives you this kind of earned sense of agency of like, oh, I had to like learn how to stand up for myself and say like, no, these like, I'm not being acted upon. I am acting on this situation, but I had to earn it kind of the hard way.
Right. But look what you've done with it. It's amazing. It's right. It's part of your story. It's part of who you are. It's part of what makes you able to navigate the situations that you're presented. So I love it. Here's like a story that I love of yours, and it's right at the beginning of Impact Players. And it talks about how you took a job at Oracle and you had this idea of what the job was that would be perfect for you. And they convinced you to do another job, right? And you took it. And being able to set aside your own agenda to be useful for the job that needed to get done.
Mm.
I feel a lot of times right now we can get so caught up in our agenda that we miss all these opportunities, right? And you did a great job. You stepped into this role, but just tell us about this story because I think it's magic and I think it's so relevant right now.
Well, it was definitely a formative experience for me. So, I joined Oracle out of grad school. I studied organizational behavior. I wanted to do leadership development. Like, I don't know what buzzed me up about this. It wasn't like I was student body president. I was born perhaps a little bit bossy, but that's what I wanted to do. Uh, and and I had done an internship for the great Carrie Patterson. So I think that's kind of what put me down this path, but I wanted to teach leadership. And so I actually tried to get a job teaching leadership. I interviewed for what was the premier leadership development company at the time, Zanger Miller, and somehow managed to get my way to the president, probably like made my case. Hey, I want to teach leadership. And I'll never forget his response. He's like, hey, Liz, you seem great, but like maybe you should go get some experience leading and managing before you like set out to teach other people how to do that. And I'm like, wow, he just doesn't understand me. Like, like
Exactly. Come on, see this.
how narrow-minded of him. Like, he doesn't see me. And I was so disappointed. I wanted to do this. And so I had to take this consolation job, this other job offer I had, which was working for Oracle software company. So I wasn't doing leadership development that I wanted, but it was a growing company. It was such a good decision. And I went there with this like, okay, I'm looking for an opportunity to teach leadership development, and I'm looking for a chance to lead. Like, those are the two things that will kind of get me what I want to do. And, I'd worked there about a year, and I was a program manager running a training, set of training programs for a division of the company. And there was this opportunity to interview for a job with their centralized training group. Now, this group ran technical boot camps because Oracle's hiring people by the thousands each year, like gobbling up all the top technical talent out of all the top universities, MIT, Caltech, Berkeley, Harvard, Stanford, all these CS programmers. And I have a chance to interview with this group. And, I go to the interview with the vice president of the group. I've already interviewed with like the director. And so this is like the final interview. And I answer Bob's questions. And then it's kind of like my chance to sort of take charge of the interview. And so I tell Bob, like, the company's growing really fast, and there's all these really young, a lot of technical talent, young people being kind of like thrown into management. They don't know what they're doing. They're wreaking havoc on their teams. It's like a problem that everyone can see. And we talk about it, and he agrees it's a problem. And so then I kind of like take charge, and I'm like, hey, you know what? Oracle needs a management boot camp, and I would love to build this. And so I'm like offering my services, and I'm kind of expecting him to say, great, like you should go do that and come join us. And his response was very different. He was like, hey, come join us. Like, hey, Liz, we'd love to have you. We'd love to have you in this group. And he had heard good things about what I had done in the past. He said, but your boss has a different problem. She's got to figure out how to get 2,000 new college graduates up to speed in Oracle technology in the next year. And what would be great is if you could help her solve that problem. He didn't like say, oh no, here's the job I want you to do. What he was saying is, go point yourself at something important and see, I'm gunning for the job I want. And he's saying it's not the job that's needed right now. What's needed is technical training. And I knew they needed technical instructors, and I wanted to teach. It was like kind of in the direction of what I wanted to do, but I had zero passion for like the nuances of correlated subqueries and like database indexing techniques. Like, that did not jazz me up. But I could hear, like, he was subtle, but I could hear such a clear message coming from him, which is, Liz, make yourself useful.
Right.
Here's what's useful. I'm like, ooh, not the job I want, but it is the job that's needed. So let me go and do that. Now, like, it taught me, like, point yourself at the problems that matter. Not like, don't follow your passion. Like, keep that in the back of your mind. Like, this is kind of what I'm good at. This is what I want to do. But like, point yourself at the problems that matter to the people that you work for, that you serve. And, it wasn't entirely selfless. It wasn't like, oh, okay, that's where I'm needed. I will go and serve where I'm needed.
It was along the path because it was teaching and things, right? So you could say, here's my North Star of where I want to go. And then you allowed the intermediate movements right here to kind of wave you there, is what it looks like from reading it.
Yes. And it's also about savvy. So it's partially about being of service.
Right.
It's also about savvy, which is if you go work on what's important, your work by definition will be important. And then you, as a byproduct, end up kind of an important player inside the organization. So it's actually this way that we build influence is
Right.
being influenced, which I know sometimes it's hard for people to accept that, which is like, no, I want to be influential. I want to do this. I'm gunning to go do this. And so we charge it. And it's like, well, there's a naval officer who's talked about like newcomers are often like, what do you say? Rookies are all force, no vector. Meaning like, boom, I'm like doing my thing, but like at the wrong target.
Right.
And what Bob was saying is, Liz, that's the target. Go point yourself there. And it was sort of this act of submission, being influenced, like, okay, that's not what I want to do. It's not necessarily what I'm very good at, but I'll go figure that out. And it was hard. I had to learn to kind of like think like a programmer.
Right.
And which was a skill set I developed.
Well, and you
that
said
serves me in my work today.
right. And you said yes to something that you knew you were lacking skills on, but you had the confidence in yourself that you would get them. Right. I think a lot of times people confuse the standpoint of I need to know this, then do that. Sometimes it's you sign up for it and then you figure it out as you're going, because that's how you become useful. We don't always know what's needed of us.
Agreed. And I would say for me, my whole career has been a string of what I call naive yeses.
Yeah.
Which is kind of this name I put to this thing of like, say yes to something hard and say it in this naive state before you figure out it's hard. And so like a naive yes isn't, oh, I'll just do anything you want. Like, okay, I'll do that. It's not about being a dumping ground for other people's requests. It's about committing to something before your logical mind kicks in and tells you, you don't know how to do that. Who are you to be teaching programming to a bunch of hotshot programmers from MIT? It was more like, oh yeah, that seems like fun. Like, I'll do that. That seems interesting and hard and challenging. And then you're like, day two, you're like, what was I thinking? Now, you have a term for this, and I read it in maybe an article. It was something you had written about you. It's like when you figure out the what, like the how figures itself out. Like, how do you express it? It's a really beautiful way.
You're putting me on the spot. All I know is that if I commit to this is what I'm doing, the how shows up. Right.
The how shows up.
The how shows up. And it just has a magic. That's one of the ways that I know that I'm on the right path. Like, here, self, this is what I want to do. And then all of a sudden doors open or things connect and you follow that little cookie crumb that is invisible, but somehow connected to you, and it comes together. And it's always been that way for me. And I think it's just, I love learning. I have a curiosity about things. And so when I lead with that curiosity of understanding that no matter what I do, it's going to give me lessons to carry forth into whatever I become. So what can I do now that makes the most sense to get us to the next spot? And then allow those doors to open and go down that path. And you just keep allowing things to happen, but it's not allowing as in a passive standpoint. It's allowing as an I'm active, I'm doing, I'm ready. And then when the door opens, you can walk right onto the field and start playing the game. You're not trying to tie your shoelaces and get ready to go. Right. And it's just always being in that state of like, I'm excited. This is life. Let's make it happen. Where do you want me, coach? Where do you want me? And be that in business or whatever. Right.
Yeah. And Jen, I think it's this committing process that works. And because what it is you're now relying on this muscle of learning. And I have to admit, I'm a bit of a lazy learner. And I just decided I was going to learn some French recently. So I signed up with the Babbel thing and I'm going along, and then it gets to conjugating like these certain verbs. And I'm like, this is hard. And I kind of let it go. I'm not one of these people who has this like ongoing learning discipline. Oh, I'm going to learn the language. What I'm good at is once I sign a contract. Then I figure it out. So, when I wrote my first book, Multipliers, I hadn't written anything longer than an email note, maybe some Christmas letters. I mean, I knew how to construct a sentence, but I had never warmed up to this. And people were like, how did you learn how to do it? I'm like, I signed a contract. I signed a contract with HarperCollins that I would deliver a book, and I wasn't about to deliver a bad book. And so I'm like, okay, now I'm going to go figure it out. But if I was like, oh, let me, practice some writing, do some here, I don't think I would have had the self-discipline to make myself learn how to do something unless there is a
deadline, or it helps us to have these rules that we need to play in, right? It gives us kind of a way to navigate things. If it's so wide open and we have no constraints, I think it's harder to do things. I'm definitely a constraint person or a deadline person. That's what keeps me motivated. It gives me okay, we're going to do this.
There's a quote. I said Henry David Longworth. It's there's nothing like the prospect of the gallows to focus one's attention. This is the naive yes, is you say yes and you're like, I've committed to this. I have no choice but to figure it out. And my whole career has been a string of, oh yeah, I'll do that. What was I thinking? Then I'm like, okay, get thinking.
Yeah,
but
I love it.
It's been kind of magical to just let that process happen. The how emerges. I love the way you say that.
Yeah, no, I love, yeah. And and just allowing so I started an investment service company when I worked for a company for a few years and then went out on my own in my early 20s. And one of my clients was the CEO of a credit union. And at that time, credit unions were going to get into the financial service sector. So no longer did you only have to go to JP Morgan or a bank to open up your IRAs or things like that. Credit unions got the approval to be able to start offering these services. So I'm doing a review meeting with a client and she's telling me hey, we're going to do this. I'm like, I can do that. I can do that for you. She's like, oh, I never even thought about that. So then it's not always who it's who knows you. Right. So I interviewed and got the contract, and her second in charge was the VP of the credit union. And he used to own a marketing firm. So he was saying, Jen, this is an opportunity that's coming around for the entire credit union industry. You should really think about doing this for some other credit unions, not just ours. Right. And sure, I'm into it. So a year before, that was never on my business plan, never on the radar, never even a thought, right? Because it just wasn't even there. But being ready, being prepared, saying yes to things, I'll figure it out. I've never worked with a credit union before. It had to have been done. And having resources that you can tap into and learn how to do the behind the scenes piece. Then we grew into being a private label for a bunch of credit unions so they could market their brand and offer this service. And I mean, it's more than 50% of that business right now.
Yeah.
Right.
And this dynamic, yes, it's hard to learn the credit union business or how to program or write a book. Yeah, that takes a lot of energy. But you know what takes more energy? Trying to push your boulder up a hill, without help.
Right.
And so it's how do you want to use your energy? Taking what you're passionate about and trying to make other people passionate about it. And okay, no, Bob, we need a management boot camp. This is why. Okay, I'm back in his office. And do you want to use your energy on something that may not ever materialize? Or do you want to look for where there's heat? And
work with them, right? It's this is where the job is. This is what the need is in the marketplace. You got lucky that someone tipped you off to it. Run with it.
Run with it. And what you said is be ready when that opportunity presents itself. There's a column by David Brooks, who's a New York Times op-ed journalist. And he's my, I have several favorites, but he might be my favorite of the favorite journalists. I love everything he writes. And there's this one column he wrote that just caught me dead in my tracks, because it absolutely captured this way of working and how I've sort of managed my career. And it hasn't been being goal-oriented or even ambitious. It's about being ready when interesting opportunities present themselves. And the column is, I can't remember the year of it, is maybe 8 to 10 years ago. It was called The Summoned Self.
Oh, wow.
And in this this piece, he describes two ways of living sort of like impactful life. One is like this goal driven, which is like, this is who I am. This is my calling in life. This is what I want to do. Let me go do that. And it can work.
Mm-hmm.
And you see people like that. I am not one of those people. And I have to admit, I don't like even working who are super goal oriented, because they're like, I become like just a boulder, like, or like on their path and you get run over by them. He said the other way is to like live a summoned life.
Ah, yeah.
And he talked about leaders who, of course, Gandhi's life was a summoned life. He's a lawyer. He's on a train from South Africa back to, and he sees this oppression. He's like, well, someone should do something about that. Well, maybe I should do something about that.
I'm a someone, right? I'm a someone.
As someone. And the situation summons you to act. And so it's about walking through life, not like, here are my goals and how do I like get people to help me pursue my goals. It's more, how can I make myself useful in a situation where there's a big need and a big impact, and then being ready to say, oh yeah, I'll do that. I'll lead that. And I think there's an incredible amount of power in the summoned life.
Oh, yes. I love that. I appreciate you sharing that, because that resonates definitely at another level. And you get summoned in different things. So like, for example, one of the next parts of your book is step up and step back. When the opportunity comes and you step up to that opportunity, it doesn't mean you need to stay in that position forever, right? You just fix so when I first moved to Park City, which was back in 2015, I took a job at Vail because I didn't know anybody. I thought it'd be a great way to meet people. I wanted to get a better skiing. And so I helped brand their local programs. All my kids were in the local program, so we all went to the hill together and yada, yada. But they needed somebody to develop something for the end of the year program. I'm like, oh, I'll do that. I'm happy to do that. And so I set up a little scavenger hunt that they had to go up certain lifts and come back down or whatever else like that. And then the next season, I helped one more season. I said I was done. But that next season I came back and I gave it to somebody else, and they took it to the next level. Right. But there was pieces of the project that they were concerned that taking on, that I'll help you with those pieces, but I need to be done with this because I'm not going to be as involved as I was last year. And so this next person took the project on and then made it better than what it was. Right. And it was so fun to be a part of that. Right. If I hadn't started the framework, she wouldn't have had something to go from. Right. And so, but I knew when I took it on, I wasn't a lifer for Vail. I'm going to learn how to ski myself. I'm going to get my kids into all these programs, meet a few people in town, and then I'm stepping away. And it's when you can take on projects and step up to things, then no, not every project you take is a lifer, and be able to hand those off. And then because you were a piece of them, you kind of hold them in your heart a little bit. And then you watch how people magnify them, or different ways they add to them, or different things. And it's so rewarding, right? It's so rewarding to see that happen and know, and then it gives you the confidence to be able to do those things again, where you step in, step out, step in, step out. And I just love that you brought that up in the Impact Players book, because I think sometimes some of us make things heavier than they need to be, or more long-term than they need to be. And we can have an impact in just the smallest of places, and how that changes things.
Well, and when we hold on to like, I need to continue to lead this, I continue to be in charge of it, like it creates this heaviness, that it creates a busyness, of course, that prevents us from being summoned into new and more interesting things. But it creates this heaviness of like, I feel so much burden, so much pressure that I can't free myself up to go like learn something new. And so it's like this perfect recipe for languishing. And like bitterness and resentment of, oh, I have to do everything, like everything depends on me. And I mean, I've had my moments, and we all like, and if you're a mom and if you are a working mom, like you have a lot of these moments, like I'm holding it all together. Like, so yeah, some of those are normal, but you can't be effective, like constantly feeling like I have to hold everything together.
Right.
And when you let go and you watch other people do it, you do hold it in your heart. And it's a little bit like having grandchildren. And this is new for me. I'm a new grandmother, and
What? Oh, how fun.
as
That's
great as they
amazing.
say. And like and of course, I want to steal my grandson from my daughter and be like, no, 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 no. She doesn't know what to do. Like,
I got this, honey. You just
I
like come
got
over.
this. Just like sign the papers. I'll raise this child. And I want to, but it is so rewarding to watch her like
Right.
step up and become this amazing mother, and to have this secondary relationship with him, and to like,
And how much fun the secondary relationship is, right? Because
yeah,
it's just a different level of commitment, a different level of responsibility, a different whatever, but it's still, oh
yeah,
yeah.
half
Yeah,
as
yeah.
heavy, twice the joy. I mean, it's, and work is very much this way. When you hand things off like to the next generation of people, you get to watch them do amazing things, knowing like you were part of that. You seeded that. This act of like stepping up into leadership roles that nobody has asked you to do, like to just say, hey, I can be helpful there. Like, I'm willing to lead that. I'll take that on. It requires this incredible confidence. Like, I can do this.
Mhm.
But then it also requires this real confidence to step back and to say, not only can somebody else do it, it's that I have value elsewhere. Like, there'll be another thing for me to go and like chomp my teeth into.
Right, right. Well, I think I look at you and you were at Oracle for 17 years.
Mm.
And then this podcast is called Take a Break, because I
Mm.
think sometimes we just need to take a break and reevaluate and make sure, are we going in the direction that we want to go? Right. Life can take us in these currents. And then if we just stop for a second and say, is this current still serving me? Right. And so you took this break for about 3 weeks or whatever. And in that break, you realized maybe it's time for a new adventure. Right. I have kids at home. I want this story to look different. And you hung up that career and
Yeah.
then started your new deal. And I am sure to the outside world,
They
people
thought I
are
was
like,
crazy.
what are you doing? Right? I mean, totally crazy. But
Crazy.
you, because you can see all the things inside your head, it gives like, I remember I changed from financial services. I have 7 children, right? So it's crazy over here. And I like hired my job out, and it's so fun to let other people be in some of those roles. I still keep tabs on the financial aspect of it, but I'm not involved by any means of the day to day. And then I took a little break, and then I got into mountaineering, right? That makes no, like they just can't fit in their head, right? But to me, it makes all the sense in the world. So I just want to hear your story and how you navigated that whole piece. And I think it's amazing.
Well, it wasn't this big, courageous leap. It was just the obvious next thing to do. It was like it was summoned. And, I was afraid to leave Oracle. I knew it was time. I was afraid to leave. And for a strange reason, is that like my mind was telling me, you know what, you need a new challenge. Like after 17 years here, like I left Oracle for a very simple reason. I actually knew what I was doing. And,
Yeah.
some people say, well, like you were like, legit, you had reached this pinnacle. And I had a great job. I was paid extremely well, better than I ever thought I would ever be paid for anything in my life. But I'm like, I know how to do it. And it's becoming dull.
Right. Right.
And I was kind of ready for that naive yes. But I'm like, I have 4 young children at home. And having an easy job right now can be kind of great. In fact, it was my husband who every time I'd say, I think I need to like move on, he'd be like, there's some advantage of having like a job you're coasting in. I'm like, it sort of like wrecks my soul. But if it's good for my family, let me stay. And so
Right.
I stayed for years in a job that I wasn't jazzed about because it was easy and I could put my focus on my children. Now, I was afraid to leave because I thought if I go off and do like this next thing and take a next big challenge, I'm going to like go into big learning mode. And if it's something I'm really passionate about, I
Right.
know, like,
I
I
can't
know how I
manage
work.
time. Right. 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 Me too. I'm like, if I'm in, I am in 1,000%. So I have to be really careful of what I'm in.
And I was afraid it was going to hurt my children.
Hmm.
And, so in a weird way, having this like big corporate job, even a big executive job was like kind of easy to be a mom. And it wasn't until a friend of mine who is, he's a dean of a medical school, but a trained psychiatrist, and a wonderful coach. And I was telling him about this tension. And he's like, well, why not? I'm like, I don't know. I don't like, what if I get consumed by this? And this, if I stay, I have more time with my family. And he said, well, he's like, maybe it's not time only that your kids need from you. Like maybe the greatest gift you can give your children would be for them to see a mom who was out doing something she loved doing. And I'm like, oh, he doesn't understand. He's not a mom. Like, oh, and then I'm like, oh, I think he's right.
Yeah, it gives me goosebumps when you say that, because to inspire, you need to be inspired. Right. And so I took time out of my career and was home with the kids. I'm like, oh, I'll just work at Vail a little bit and just do something. So my brain feels like it's getting some stimulation. And then when the whole mountaineering thing came up, and I was, well, what my son challenged me, right? He's like, Mom, if we do hard things, why even climb Mount Everest? So it started with Mount Everest. And I remember going to the school then and saying, hey, listen, I've never been away from home this long. This is a huge undertaking for me. I just want you guys to keep a closer eye on my kids. Here's what's happening at home. And the school was so excited. I said, let's involve the kids and have everybody have an Everest goal. So then we turned this into a whole school-wide campaign, and these little kids wrote what their Everest goal was on the wall. I talked to them about setting big goals. We, nowadays with technology, you can do Zoom calls from base camp. So these kids I call into each classroom, and they're asking me like, where you eat, where do you go to the bathroom? Like kid questions.
You're their
right?
astronaut. You're like
right.
up in space and inspiring them. And I think you're so right. It's like, yeah, like I could have spent every waking moment with my kids, or I could have like given them example of this is what it's like when you're deeply engaged in doing work that like has meaning and contribution. And then like, I know when I've like done something hard at work and I come home, I'm like, whoa, rather than like, okay, what are we going to do? Dinner. And,
right. Like, do you people only eat? I mean, like when I have that attitude, I'm like, okay, I need more stuff going on in my life.
like I just fed you like 4 hours ago. Why is like, do you really need to eat again? And it's been a wonderful experience. And I remember a moment with my son who, he's the one who's the big mountaineer. And I often write stories about him because he's such this unique and wonderful, crazy, wild kid. And he was picking me up from the airport. I had just come back from London, and it was the Thinkers 50 event where they kind of like make this list of 50 top leadership thinkers. I think I came back from my first one and had like made it on the list. And he was asking me about it. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, it's just kind of award, but it's no big deal. And he was like we were driving with family. He goes, Mom, it's a big deal. It's a big deal to be like identified as like in the top 50 of things that you do, whether it's like surfing or mountaineering or management thinking. He's like, Mom, it's a big deal. And he was so proud. And it was like, I was kind of like downplaying, like, yeah, because like the awards and distinctions you get at work and like have no meaning compared to like the joy of your family. But it was seeing my son be so proud of this thing.
Right.
And he's the one who's like the least corporate, like, he's a hippie. And it's been something that we've been able to share as a family. And like, it's pretty cool to like cheer your kids on in life. That's a pretty cool thing.
I think it's the best thing, right? And then when they watch you, and so when you win that award, right? And to us, we try to downplay it just because I don't know why we do that, but it is something all of us do. But I'll never forget, my daughter had a friend over, and their friend's like, oh, is you're the mom? Your mom's the one that climbed Mount Everest. And my daughter goes, I know. And she said we could someday too. Right. And like, you're like, yes, because that's something they carry. Like if my mom did it, that's part of me. So I'm capable of so much.
So Jen, I want to tell you about this youngish man, Zach Kaplan. And when I was doing the Impact Players book, and
oh yeah, his mom, right? Like,
yeah,
tell us this.
His manager said, oh, let me tell you about one of our Impact Players, Zach Kaplan. He's amazing. I wrote a couple stories about him. And absolutely amazing. And in the interview, he's like, we were talking about like, where did you learn this mindset, this orientation towards work? And he's like, well, I kind of learned a lot of it watching my mom. And then he says, it was so cute. He's like, well, I kind of have a badass mom, and like, you should meet her. You would really like her. And so I, find out like his mom is the CEO of this, this big ad agency. And she started as a receptionist, sort of like, yeah, I just need an easy job. And the founder of the company said, okay, yeah, as a receptionist, you're like the face and voice of Hill Holiday. You're who people like first see and experience. And she's like, wow, this isn't a little job. This is an important job. And I'm going to be like the CEO
Of
of
the
reception.
reception. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then she's like, kept getting these bigger and bigger jobs. Like, I'm just going to be the CEO of everything I do, meaning I'm going to take charge and not wait for someone to like anoint me. I'm just going to make things important. And he watched his mom do this, and getting to interview, I interviewed them both like, probably it's like half a dozen times between the two of them, and watching how her example shaped him and inspired him was amazing.
Right, right. The gift, right? The gift of seeing how that plays out. And yeah, it's so good. It's so good. And I read this book, Impact Players, and I have a son who's a sophomore in high school this next year. And one of the stories that we talked about, and I think part of these books is when you have the language and you have, oh, hey, here's something that's going on, like make work light, right? So I'm talking to him and he's asking for something, whatever else like that. And I said, Jack, I love you to death, but do you know how much time that is for me to drive you to this place and do this thing and do whatever? And here's what we have going on, right? So I'm going to say no right now. And he's like, okay, that's fine. Then he comes back 15 minutes later. Okay, mom, I heard you. And here's these things that we can do. Like, I think this will make it easier for you to make it happen. And I said, I love you. You made this lighter for me. You paid attention to the thing, and now we can make your thing happen.
Right.
Right.
And I think as moms, we sometimes think, oh, my job is to just do whatever it takes to support my kids. But we also have this opportunity to teach, which is like, well, you can kind of grow up and be a high maintenance kind of person because your parents in the background were like bringing you your lunch when you forgot it, and like, doing all these things to sort of make life easy for you. Or you can learn that, what, when you're someone who is low maintenance, everyone wants to work with you.
Right.
And it's the people who make work light that become really valuable and influential on teams. Like, none of us like to work with high maintenance, difficult, self-oriented people. So like, what a wonderful lesson, which is like, if I can make, and I often think like, when I need something from someone, I need a yes from someone. And sometimes like when I in my research, I'm writing, like, I need people to say yes to me. Like, yes, you can write a story about me, and yes, you can do it. And one of the things I'm always telling myself is, how do I make it easy for this person to say yes? Like, how do I set this up so it's easy for them to review? It's easy for me to be able to move things forward. It's like, if I make it easy for people, you're likely to get the yes. If I like, well, here's like a 20-page thing and all these things you have to do, it's like, don't be surprised that no one says yes or doesn't even respond to your email. Like, how do I make it a light lift?
Right. Right. Well, and you did this.
Help I need.
This is one of my favorite stories of yours that I read in one of the readings, was this wedding dress story.
Oh, God.
Right. And the reason why is because you made that job light. Right. So I'm going to let you tell the story a little bit, but you didn't ask the owner to go find the fabric. You went and found like, it was in you. Does that make sense? Like, you took responsibility, you figured it out, and you fixed it. Okay, but we have to back into the story. So you have to tell.
Well,
It's
again, this is one of the advantages of like having a father who was like, well, if you want to go to college, like,
figure it
don't
out.
look for me. And, I kind of like, that wasn't the only dress I wrecked. There was actually an earlier story where someone came in and wanted a mother of the bride dress. And my mom told me not to do it. It's kind of a long story. I'm going to try to be short with it, which is, I ended up making her dress. She didn't like it. And she took me to court at 17 years old.
Oh my gosh.
And, my father's response was, you're on your own.
Of course.
But I was being sued for like $250. It was all of my life savings. And I'm now like going to be going to college, soon. And so one of the advantages of like having to figure things out for yourself early in life, hint, hint, moms, we should help our kids figure things out for themselves rather than like, I'll bail you out of this.
Right.
Don't worry, I'll handle it in the background. You'll never know that there was trouble here. But I did have this orientation. So what had happened is I grew up loving to sew. And, my mom had me in piano lessons. I hated it. I was incorrigible. And I went to her one day and said, Mom, I have other talents that I'd like to develop. And like, if you'll kind of like, if you want, I'll do piano forever, but like, I wouldn't mind being released from this. And so my mom's like, what am I supposed to say to that? Like, okay, you can be released. And so I like started to just sew, and I loved to sew. I got this job at a wedding. And so I explained that because no proper wedding gown shop should hire a 17-year-old alteration seamstress. Like, it was completely irresponsible. This was not a super high class place. It was just like in the mall in San Jose, California. And so I did alterations, and I was sort of fearless.
That's awesome.
Like, and then I'd be like, okay, we're gonna cut the inches off this, and it kind of like mostly worked out. And in fact, it sort of always worked out. But there was this one bride. She was Kathy, is her name. Kathy, if you're listening, if anyone knows Kathy, I've heard this story. Like, I still am trying to find Kathy. Okay. She comes in. She's a little bitty. She's like size 6, and she falls in love with the size 12 dress, and it's discontinued. It's the last one on the rack. That's her wedding gown. And so the owner's like, Liz, could you do this? I mean, it's a big job. You're not doing little alterations, you're reconstructing the whole dress. So I'm like, of course. So I do it, and turns out it fits her perfectly. Like, she comes in, tries it on, and like there's hugging involved, and she's just like, thank you. And it looked great on her. And then it stayed at the wedding shop. She didn't take it home with her, like kept it there, and it was probably in safer keeping than at home when, like, I don't know, the cat's gonna climb up it. And she came in to pick up the dress 4 days before her wedding. And I remember they called back to me like, Liz, do you have the dress ready? And I'm like, and I was supposed to press it. And honestly, I didn't like pressing the dresses. I thought it was like beneath me. Like, no.
Of course, at 17, 100% it is.
I'm a skilled craftswoman. Like, I sew. Like, other people who are sitting around waiting to sell wedding gowns could maybe press the dresses. So I had a little bit of an attitude about this, and I didn't like doing it. And so she was there, and so I went to go press it. And still today, I kind of like iron everything on hot and just like, go faster. And so I just turned on the iron, and I just went to press her dress. Dumb me, started right on the bodice. And I've learned since, like, some rules about testing things before you put hot irons on them, metaphorically. But I put the iron on the bodice of her dress, and I watched the dress just in an instant shrivel. It was like tacky polyester from the 80s, and it was like, and I'm watching as her wedding gown is melting under the iron. And it's one of those things where you're like, this can't be happening. Like I'm being punked, pranked. Like, how when you do something that you're like, I didn't really just do that, did I? And I'm like, wow, there's a big hole in her dress.
This happened.
No, it happened. And it's one of those moments where you're like, well, do I tell a lie? I'm a terrible liar. So like, that wasn't really even an option. I'm like, or do I just go tell her the truth? Like, you go tell her the truth. And so I just was like, there was no choice other than to just walk out there. And I said, Kathy, I've just, in ironing your dress, I just melted a really big hole in the bodice, and it's bad, but I will fix this. So her wedding's in 4 days.
Right.
And I still, like, this woman is always been held as like this icon in my mind because she didn't hit me. She didn't scream at me. She should have and could have. Like, it would have been probably
appropriate response in today's world. Yes.
Appropriate response. And I just said, Kathy, I will fix it. I will, like, if you come back in 2 days, I will remake this, and it will be perfect. And she's like, and I think it was because I did a good job on the alteration. She's like, and I remember her, she's like, you can really do that. And I'm like, I can do it. And she's like, okay. And then I'm like, okay, I got to go figure that out. And, I was in high school. So I'm like, after school, I'm like running around San Jose.
Right.
This was back though in the day when there were still fabric stores, not just like craft stores. Like, and I had to like match it all because I had to completely like rebuild this section. It was a very unfortunate section to have like a big hole in. And she came back and it was, I mean, of course it's not perfect because, I had to patch it together, but it's pretty near perfect. Like it's not
Noticeable. Right.
And what I remember is that she didn't like take it and stomp off like, yeah, you wrecked my wedding, stressing out. She just like hugged me and thanked me. And
Ugh.
like it was formative, like tell the truth, fix it fast, like own your mistakes.
Yeah. And you fixed it. You didn't put it on your boss, right? It wasn't a load for them. And now we all have Kathy in our head as this like anchor of how to be as a human when things are not perfect. It's
Right. And if
amazing.
anyone knows about Kathy, if you have a friend named Kathy who has ever told a story about some young girl who like melted her dress, like I would love to reconnect with her. Like you shaped me by giving me a chance to fix it myself and then praising me for doing it. So many people are hiding their mistakes from their bosses. Like, newsflash, like your boss knows.
Yeah, that's like my children. They think like they're hiding things from me. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just pretend that I don't know this right now because I don't want to deal with it. But honey, who are you kidding?
Who are you kidding? Like, kids tend to leave like evidence. Like, yes. Oh, I know what you've been doing because you left the scissors out. Like, yeah. I can see your tire tracks. But when we own our mistakes, it actually builds our credibility. And when we fix them fast and like fix them and then like do a little extra, I don't think like, I wish I could go back. It's one of my regrets that I didn't like not just fix her dress, that I didn't say like, oh, and by the way, here's a keepsake for your wedding. Here's,
oh, you gave her a memory keepsake. No worries.
I gave her a story to tell.
You gave her a story to tell 100%, and a story for yourself to anchor yourself in what kindness looks like. Right. So it's amazing. So
kind and she was scared. Right. But she was like, just look at me in the eye and tell me you can do this. I'm like, I can do it. Yeah. No, this is amazing. I love it. Okay. I could talk to you forever about everything because there's so much, but I'm respecting your time. I'm so appreciative. I do want to talk these two books right here. So Multipliers, Impact Players, you have other ones. These ones resonated so much with me, and not just from a business standpoint. Like I know they're business books, but if you read Multipliers and you think of that as in running your household, and you think of that as like, how do you empower your children to feel genius when you talk to them instead of you being the genius? And there's this page 208, 209 by the whole book for just those 2 pages, because it gives you how you might accidentally be diminishing and you don't even know that you're diminishing because you think you're helping. And this shows up for me like rescuing, right? Where I'm a rescuer and I just have to make space for mistakes because it allows them to make mistakes and allows them to know that they can recover, right? So as a mom, read this book, even if you're not in the workplace, because it will change the way you parent. And it's amazing, like on all levels. I want to say one thing about this, and this is to the moms who are working and feel this tension. Like, I can't do everything. Like, the book is a leadership book and it was written mostly for the workplace. I seeded it with some examples in parenting, and so many people say, wow, that is a parenting handbook. And there's 2 things I want to say about that. Number one is, I think the skill set in being a good parent is the same skill set of being a good leader in the workplace, and vice versa. Like, bad leaders in the workplace look very much like bad parenting, and some of that is like over controlling, but some of it is also like just being too helpful, too nice, too accommodating, that people don't grow under them. The second thing I want to say about it is, like, so much of what I've learned about leading didn't come from my research. Like, I've done a lot of really thorough research, but like, I wrote that book in the height of the mess of being a mom of young children. And so much of my understanding of what good leadership came from just grappling with it myself. Right. Like, trying to like, do I step in? Do I step back? like, and figuring out like I'm not in charge. Like I think it's one of the most powerful things you can learn as a parent is like, yeah, you're in charge on paper, but you're not really in charge. And so how do you lead through influence rather than control?
Right. And help them find their genius and help them develop that. So when other things are hard, they have something they can fall back on and build their confidence back up in. Right. I mean, there's so much in these books that is just, it's a game changer. They're game changers.
Yeah. Well, it sure helped me. And, helped me as I grappled with how do you become like a really good parent?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because you want to do that job just well enough so that you get grandchildren.
Yes. And you have one now. I
You get
love it. Love it.
access
Love
to
it.
them. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, it's so good. Oh, I love you. This has been such a great hour of our time. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This is amazing.
And I can talk to you forever. And I do really think that it is one of these things that you and I really share is this sense of like the way you do hard things is not like even pushing yourself. It's like just building muscle memory, which is
Yes.
I've done hard things before and I know how to do hard things. Like I don't have to be the smartest person in the world to like have a learning muscle. And there's so many times when you mentioned skiing and I kind of grew up skiing. I love to ski. I'm not a great skier, but like there's like you're going down the slope and you get yourself into trouble, like big bumps, steep, narrow, like something. And you're like, I have a choice right now. Do I kind of let go and wipe out? Or can I pull myself out of this fall? Like, that moment where like you're about to fall and you have a choice. I can either dig in deep, cut my edges, like, and pull myself back into control and get down this mountain, or I can just let myself fall. And it's just like building this muscle memory of like, I've pulled myself out of a fall before,
Right.
or I've gotten back up after a fall. And like, I did it then and I can do it again. And it like just helps you like, just, I don't know, carve your edges a little bit harder and just like, I'm going to pull myself out of this fall.
Right.
And
Right.
it's what you like, it's what you do.
That's what we all do. That's what we hope we all do, right? Because that's where the living is. It's like, we can fall. That's an option, but let's just see what happens if we try not to
Mhm.
and allow that to show up. Because when that shows up, it's magic. It's amazing. So yay. Ah,
Well, I wish you incredible success
thank you.
on your next big climb. And whether that's to the summit or to a great experience, like
It's all part of it. That's
we'll
what
be
I've learned.
cheering for you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I hope we connect again. I hope we get our paths cross. Actually, I feel they are going to cross no matter what. I don't know why. I just have that sense.
Yeah, I'm sure of it.
So thank you, Liz. Take care.